Welcome to the Magdalene Voices, giving voice to those silenced for centuries through sacred conversations with beautiful, illuminating souls. I am your host and facilitator, Mariaestela. I serve radiant beings just like you, committed to awakening through love and the deep sacred work required to not only unveil the truth of who you are, what you are, and why you came, but also to express that truth and knowledge through the work that you do in this world. If you haven't already, I highly encourage you to join my sacred circle to stay connected and updated. You can do so on my website, Mariaestela.com. I currently offer sacred journeys for soulful entrepreneurs and Magdalene's Rising, wanting to embrace, embody, and express their divine feminine and divine masculine essences of being and doing, as well as work deeply with their shadow aspects, ultimately serving the world in its unveiling, awakening, healing, enlightenment, and ascension. In my sacred journeys, I not only facilitate, but I also catalyze the expression of your soul's divine purpose, supporting you in bringing forth that which you are here to birth. If you're curious about my work, go to Mariaestela.com to find out more. And if you have ever wondered about your own personal Magdalene connection and calling, whether you are a Magdalene or not, I invite you to download the Magdalene Blueprint that I have created for you. Go to mariaestela.com/AYM to get it. Hello, Radiant One, and a very big and warm welcome to today's episode of the Magdalene Voices. In today's episode, I will be sharing with you my discoveries, my revelations, my experiences, and my knowledge about and with the divine feminine essences and their shadow aspects, or what others call the four polarities. To start with the beginning, I've been on my awakening healing journey for a very long time now. And in February of 2017, I was led to a book by Trisha McCannon. Trisha, who was actually the first beautiful soul that I invited into sacred conversation here on the Magdalene Voices for that very reason. I was led to her book called Return of the Divine Sophia. And in that book, which is really a book about her own healing journey, her own awakening journey, she shares a bit about a teacher who shares about what they called the four polarities, and what I call the divine feminine and the divine masculine essences and their shadow aspects. And in order to begin, I want to share just a little excerpt from their book, or from her book, Trisha's book, Return of the Divine Sophia, so that you may gain an understanding of what the four polarities or the divine essences are. And that's because I've found this to be the most, covering so, I don't want to invent anything when someone has written something that is beautiful and I find really good. So this is a part where Trisha's teacher Shasta shares, and she says, "I wish to talk about the four male and female polarities that are expressed by the one creator behind it all. Egyptians called this divine presence Atum, the first primordial intelligence that set everything in motion." And then she goes on to share, "This is the creator that exists before even the polarities of the divine mother and father. However, in all the subtle realms of spirit, as well as in the worlds of form, the yin and yang polarities exist in a constantly moving dance of energies," which is so beautiful. And so that is where it stems from. The divine, to me, the divine feminine essences and their shadow aspects are part of our source. It is when we combine the divine feminine essences of the masculine and the feminine, we create the sacred merit, the divine union, and we experience in our human form a level of satisfaction, a level of content and fulfillment that I haven't experienced in basically anything else, or rather only in deep, deep meditation. And as I was reading this book, and where this is shared in her book, it is shared so that it is kind of scattered over different pages. And the way my brain works is that it's very organized, it's very structured. And so I basically began to write this down. Like whenever they were mentioning the divine aspects or the shadow aspects, I would write it down. And I want to show you what I, because this is the original. This is the original. This is the beginning, basically, of my revelation. And it wasn't until later when I began downloading things and began seeing, it was like, when you have those domino effects, it was like seeing dominoes just click into place, not only for myself, but for my clients and for everyone I've ever worked with, everyone I've ever been in contact with, whether it be through business or mentoring or simply just family or friends. And it has become more or less the way that I view the world through these essences and their shadow aspects. If you're listening to this via podcast, I want you to know that in the show notes of this episode, there is a link so you can go to the website or to my website, and there I will share an image of what I'm going to show on the video right now, which is the original, version of what was written down. So here it is. This is how I started. I started saying, okay, what are what they called the positive feminine? What is what they call the positive masculine, and then the negative and the negative feminine and the negative masculine. And so you can see this is how I wrote it down. Just basically just outlined it like this. And that was the beginning. And at the time, I didn't know that it was going to be the beginning of a whole new, I want to say, era, or a whole new sense of meaning and purpose and way of framework, I suppose it is. And many before me and many after me will probably discover this as well. But to me, this is basically what you, I wouldn't say need, because as you know me, I don't ascribe to need, but it's a framework that can really, really support you in your awakening, healing, unveiling journey, if you're willing to look at it. Now that I've discovered or described what they are, I want to, so in this episode, I'm going to talk about how they pertain to soul-driven, heart-based entrepreneurs and what I call Magdalene Rising, because I think that there's a journey for all of us in these. But also, if you're listening to this and you're not a soulful entrepreneur, and if you don't have any aspirations to be a soulful entrepreneur, I invite you to listen in, because these divine feminine essences and their shadow aspects can be valuable to anyone who's really willing to do the work and use them and work through them and with them. So that was the discovery and the revelation I had. And then as I said, I think it was a couple of days later, I began having, I began seeing everything click into place in terms of how these were showing up for people, both that I was working with and also people I had worked with. I was seeing how if someone was, quote unquote, weak in their divine feminine aspects, meaning they weren't in contact with their gnosis or their knowledge or their wisdom, then and if they're if they weren't that, and they weren't connected with their divine masculine aspects either of building, of forming, of creating, of expanding, then they were diving deep. And the level depends on how long you've been not connecting, but they were in their shadow aspects. And it's important to note that the shadow aspects doesn't mean, because I know that in the book they're mentioned as quote unquote negative, and we in the world view negative as being bad, but it doesn't necessarily have to be bad. What I've found is that when you're willing to look at the shadow aspects when they show up, then you're actually able to transform them and bring light to them, and gain, you know, immense lessons and experience and knowledge through that. And that is, I find so really important, and the reason why we're here is to for me to do that, not to stay in the dark or to stay in the shadows, but to work with them and through them, basically, through the mastery, through love. So what I saw was that when we are suppressing or ignoring our divine feminine aspects and masculine aspects, we veer into the shadow parts of it, and it's not a fun place to be, because the shadow aspects are the places of, in terms of the divine, the shadow feminine, it's the aspects that are jealous. It's the realm of the quote unquote bitch. It's the jealousy. It's the bitterness. It's the conniving. It's the manipulating aspects of ourselves. And the shadow aspects of the masculine is the abuser, the oppressor, the one that forces things through without, you know, asking for consent or being allowed to. While the divine feminine and divine masculine aspects are the ones where, when you combine those two, you have a knowledge, you have a wisdom, you know intuitively without knowing how you know, and you build from that place. And even just saying it, I have this sense of calm and peace and divine union coming over me. So as I was saying, I discovered this and began laying the pieces, and began quote unquote like researching in terms of myself and also in terms of my clients. And I began using love, which is at the core of everything that I do. But I began using these without, I began using those as entry points of how to, transform things, to move things back into balance and into center. And it has worked tremendously, not only for myself, but for my clients as well. And the thing is, you don't have to know whether or not it's divine feminine or divine masculine at all. You don't have to put a label to it. All you need to know is that once you veer into the shadow aspects, allow them to show you the lessons. So in terms of the shadow aspects, let's say that you are jealous or afraid of competition, or worried that you won't ever make it, or all of the things that can come up for us as we journey into the land of the shadow aspects. What you can do is if you're willing to sit with it and allow her or him. So it's also important to know that this has nothing to do with, when I mention feminine or masculine, it has nothing to do with male or female, because we all carry these essences and aspects within ourselves. Whether, whatever gender you ascribe yourself to, then you have these divine feminine and divine masculine essences, and their shadow aspects. And so, whether you are, it doesn't matter, your sexuality or your gender or your religion or whatever, that's not what it's about. It's about the internal side of you. And so when I refer to him or her through this recording or wherever, I do that because I personalize or humanize their aspects. And one of the things that has been very valuable to me is go and sit with him or her. Go sit with the shadow aspects of myself and ask her, how come you're jealous? What is going on? And she may be telling you that no, she's jealous because she's not being given the opportunity to show up. She's not being given the opportunity to voice what she's here to do. He may tell you that you're not allowing him to build everything that you know you carry within yourself. You're not allowing yourself to write the blog post or do the videos or create the content. And so he becomes frustrated and starts to be abusive, and it can be a riot within. And once they show up for you and you allow them to express themselves, they can then become helpful and transform it into light and become powerful adversaries in your journey and in your work, the work that you're here to do. In terms of my own journey, I'm going to share my own journey as I know it through these, because I see that there seems to be, and this is something that I'm still working on and I'm still researching, but more and more people, whenever I share this, are stepping forward and saying, this was me too. And so I am sharing this because I basically want to support you if you're, anywhere on this path, on this journey that I'm going to share with you. I want you to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that it is not a freight train coming your way. It is actually true light. So for me, my I guess I've always been a spiritual being, and I've always had a knowing of something other than what we could see and hear and feel and touch, but I didn't at the time know what to do with it. And for a very long time, I steered away from everything having to do with God or anything to do with spirituality, and I just didn't want any part of it. And so my beginning, the moment that I began my journey, I would say that my conscious moment of beginning, well, let me just tell you, I wasn't conscious about it at the time. This is something that happens with, age and time. Basically, I'm able now to go back and see the milestones or the key points where I'm like, oh, okay, this is that happened. This is when that happened. Okay. So my journey began with these feminine and masculine aspects, and their shadow aspects began when I was working as a key account manager for a very large European acquirer, one of the largest in Northern Europe, in Scandinavia. And I was a key account manager, and I was doing really well. I was making a shit ton of money. I had great colleagues and friends. I had an amazing boss. I was signing contracts. I was negotiating $1 million contracts for acquiring purposes, and I was doing that all over Scandinavia. And I had a car, and I had everything. And I've shared this before, but I truly did have everything. But I wasn't happy. And there came a time when I realized that this is not working. And the reason why it didn't work for me, or it wasn't working for me, was because I couldn't feel my heart. That was the key point for me. I couldn't feel my heart. And being someone who is very invested or connected to my heart or to my source, it was a non-negotiable. And so I left. And what I see now is that it was my divine feminine who was awakening, and she was rising, and she was saying, listen, what you're doing is in the realm of, it was very much in the realm of the divine, or not the divine, but the shadow feminine aspect, because I was, and some will say, and that's okay in business, and that's, that's their point. I didn't want to be doing it, but I felt that I was very manipulative. I was able to get my way, and I was working every asset that I had in order to do that. And truth be told, I felt like a honeypot that people couldn't say no to. And I felt that that was unaligned. I felt it was untruthful, and that is why, that's the moment I realized, okay, I can't feel my heart, and so I'm quitting. And people thought I was batshit crazy, and I probably was. And I'm not. It's not something that I'm going to necessarily recommend to everybody doing that. But that was the way for me. So that was the moment that I realized, okay, this is not working for me. So I stopped. And instead, I started my own business. I became, first I was a virtual assistant, and then also I began working as a business mentor, spiritual business coach, working with people. But the problem was that the way that I was doing it was, I was based, I had this awakening heart. I had this rising divine feminine within me, the Magdalene Rising, as I call her. But I was doing it from a space of shadow masculine, because I had no idea what divine masculine meant at that time, or even what it looked like. We've grown up in a patriarchal society that favors the masculine aspects of ourselves, and not so much the divine masculine aspects, not as the way that I see them, but the shadow masculine aspects. It's about getting, doing. And if people won't, then you're just going to force them. You're going to coerce them. You're going to suppress. You're going to push your agenda through no matter what. And so those were those were the ways that I was, quote unquote, trying to make my business work. Those were the aspects, because I didn't know any way other than that. And so that's normal. I was trying to listen to every expert on the market who said, do your Facebook ads like this, and do your images like that, and your font has to be like that, and do your colors like that, and online marketing has to be like that, and your sales text has to be like that, and your newsletters have to, you have to have this and that. It was like all of these rigid structures that said, this is the right way, this is the right way, this is the right way. And I was just trying, and thus missing the point of connecting deeply with my divine feminine and my divine masculine aspects. And so I tried that for a very long time, and it came to a screeching halt, because I wasn't feeling well. I did have clients, and the one thing that has been the most beautiful part of my journey has been that I have been able to support clients, even though I've had a lot of shit and have done a lot of healing. And there seems to be this notion that you can't work on your own shit and then support people. I don't believe in that, because I've done that. And I do believe that you're able to, I wouldn't say separate yourself, because that's not what I do in my sessions. I call upon a higher force, and I join when I join in session. When I join in session, it's not about me. It's about who I'm with, and their business and their purpose and their expression and their expansion. And I have been able to hold space for that through my own shit. And so it's just, I want to make that clear that you can do that, because I see it over and over again, and I've done it myself. And based on my clients and their results, it is possible to do that. So for me, it came to a screeching halt. I can't remember. I'm not sure how many years ago it is now, but what I realized was that I was doing from a space that didn't resonate with me. It wasn't heartfelt or heart-based, and so I stopped. And I didn't do anything. I actually made the conscious choice of saying, I will not do anything until it comes from love, from space of peace and joy, and not happiness, but satisfaction. Before it comes from the heart, I will not be doing anything. And again, this is not something I highly recommend, or I don't, recommend to anyone, because it needless to say, it was very draining for my 401k, for my all of my savings and everything. So it's not something I necessarily recommend to anyone, but for me, it was the right thing to do, because I wasn't doing from the right space. And so during that time, what I would do is I would connect with my divine feminine. I would sit in meditations. I would take long, long walks along the ocean. I was very fortunate to be living at a space where, I was living just by the ocean. I could look out at the ocean every day. And so I would take these long, long, hour-long walks, up and down the coast, and just connect and heal from a space of divine feminine. And then there came a time when I was I was ready, and part of that readiness had to do with Trisha McCannon's book, Return of the Divine Sophia, because what I realized was that I had been trying to do from a space um, of shadow masculine or shadow feminine. But what I did, the revelation and the discovery that I made in that book was that there is a way that you can do from a space of divine masculine. And that was also the moment when I realized that we have to that the rise of the divine feminine, it's very apparent in the world that the divine feminine is rising, and it is a beautiful thing, and I want to just encourage it and uplift it. What I also see the current rise of the divine feminine as is that it is also a rise of the divine masculine aspect or essence of ourselves. Because if we only allow our divine feminine aspect or essence, to rise, then we do suppress the divine masculine, and that will only take us back down into the shadow lands of them, and then we will have to redo or relearn or reheal or retransform, or relift, like unveil those veils. And I say that because I see it in my work all the time. I am fortunate to work with beautiful clients. Most of them are women, but some are men, where they have connected deeply with their divine feminine aspects. They're connected with their gnosis and their knowledge. But what happens is, and this is what happened for me, and that's when my divine masculine essence began to rise, was I was so connected to her, and I felt I had blog posts or articles coming up. I had, posts on Instagram or Facebook. I had YouTube, I had video. I had things, percolating, just bubbling within me, but I wasn't giving it an expression in the world. I wasn't allowing myself to express it through the divine masculine essence, and that's how I view it. When that happens, when we don't express it, we become frustrated and irritated and bitter and jealous, and we see all of the images on Facebook or Instagram, and we become irritated because we're not expressing. And so that is something that I'm very very keen on making sure that, and also again, because it's not only within myself, I see it within my clients as well, is that we're so connected to her, but we don't allow him to build them. And I see it, as I said, in my clients, and I also see it in the groups that I'm part of, where there seems to be this denial of, I wouldn't say denial of, but denial of any masculine aspect or essence. And I can understand that, because we've been so conditioned to doing things, quote unquote, the masculine way. But what I see is that we haven't been conditioned to doing it the divine masculine way. We've been conditioned to doing it the the shadow masculine aspect way. And of course that's going to feel off, because when you awaken your divine feminine essence within yourself, as she rises, she's going to be quote unquote demanding that her divine masculine aspects rise with her. in order for her to feel complete and fulfilled and whole and satisfied. And if you don't do that, then again, then you'll just veer back into the shadow aspects of quote unquote her. So that is partly what I've been experimenting with, or researching or working with over the past year and a half. And as I began touching upon these points within both myself and within my clients, I realized that there is a way of being and doing that is as a sacred marriage or a divine union. And that doesn't mean that you don't get shit done at all. It means that you get to work in flow, or like in I wouldn't say flow, but it's there comes this ebb and flow. Like there's a natural rhythm to your work. And so that, that doesn't mean that for me, for example, I'm very someone who's very has been very grounded in my masculine essence, but also my shadow masculine aspect. But it's not about one over the other. It's about combining the two. And it's also, there comes a time when you are ready to let go of the notion of things you have to do or should be doing, and instead begin to go within and listen. So excuse me. For me, that means that I do my things in my business. I do send out the newsletters. I create the videos and the episodes for the Magdalene Voices. I invite beautiful, sacred, illuminating souls into sacred conversations. I hold space for my clients. I still have a structure and an order, but there's nothing where one of my my alarm signals is always if I have to do something. It feels like I have to do something, then I actually start backing away from it, and so because I know it's not connected, because there's no part of my divine feminine or my divine masculine aspect that is going to tell me that I have to do something. It's not going to be an order or a demand. It's going to be a heartfelt calling and a nudge. And sure, you can ignore it or suppress it if you want to, and that's just going to take you down into the shadows, and then you've still got work to do. I do as well, because I'm still alive, so I don't think that the work is done until the day that I take my final breath as whoever this is in this lifetime. I have 2 articles, and I'm going to share these in the show notes as well. I've written 2 articles. One is called The Lazy Duck, and the other is called The Headless Chicken. And in those 2 articles, I describe or characterize the the 2 most common imbalances that I've found when we have this with the divine feminine or the divine masculine essences, and I'm just going to share one of the things. So if someone is very in touch with their divine feminine essence, what usually is the case is that they don't want to be doing things if they don't feel like it. And that can become it can become a block or basically a sabotage of yourself. I know of some who are, extremely connected with their divine feminine essence. Excuse me, I'm just going to have a drink of water. Yeah, so not doing can become a sabotaging block, and it can then again spiral you into the depth of the Shadowlands. And what I've found is there are times in our lives, and it's not about pushing yourself through or forcing yourself through. It's about recognizing what is going on. So is not sitting down and writing the blog post, or not sitting down putting out the offer for people to work with me, or not sitting down and recording the video, not sitting down writing the newsletter, not sitting down and connecting with people, that could be, beneficial to me in my business, quote unquote. Not doing those things is sabotaging. And sometimes I've found, and this is something that I've found very often, is that we get lulled into the idea, oh, I just have to, sit, and meditate on this, or I just have to do some oils on this, or work with a crystal, or set up a grid. And I love all of those things, like meditation, crystals, oils, whatever. I love them. So I'm not speaking out against them. What I'm saying is that sometimes you get lulled by ego into thinking this is about, me taking time, me taking, self-care. Sometimes the best self-care you can do is actually write that article. It is producing that video. It is connecting with that person. Sometimes that is the best self-care, because the level of satisfaction that you gain from it is far deeper than in anything, in this world. So so this has been a journey through the divine feminine and the divine masculine essences or energies and their shadow aspects. I hope that I have given you an idea of how you can begin to work with them and have them support you in your awakening, your healing, your transformation. If you would like to know more about them, you can go to my website, Mariaestela.com. And as I said, I'm also going to be leaving in the show notes, I'm going to be leaving some articles that you can check out. And finally, if you feel called for us to work together, you can check out my services and see if this is something that would resonate with you. If you have questions or comments, I would love for you to leave them on the article that follows this, or either you can either do that on YouTube, or you can do it on the social media or on my website. And also, I want to encourage you to share this with someone who may or may not be in the depths of this, giving them the understanding, or perhaps even the framework to understand what's going on and what they can do to I don't want to say get out, because you can't get out, but to get through it. Because as always, the only way to get quote unquote out is to go through it. There is no way out. It's always through. And so that was what I had chosen to share with you today. I hope it served you well. If you liked it, I would love for you to leave as a review or a comment. Yeah, that's it. Take care. I love you. Namaste. That is what we have for you in today's episode of the Magdalene Voices. I hope it served you well. If you are listening to this via podcast, know that you can go to my website, Mariaestela.com. That's Mariaestela.com for all of the deeds and the details. Finally, I hope you will take a moment to either leave us a comment or review and share it with your friends on social media. God bless.